Welcome to the discussion. My guests today are Keith Nelson, the Global Head of Public Sector for Automation Anywhere, Tim Persons, the Chief Scientist at the Government Accountability Office, John Felstead, the Chief of Enterprise Integration and Technology Services at the Defense Logistics Agency, and Adam Goldberg, the Executive Architect at the Office of Financial Innovation and Transformation at the Bureau of Fiscal Service for the Treasury Department. Gentlemen, welcome to the panel. Let me set some context for our discussion. The most recent update from the Office of Management and Budget on the President's management agenda shows just how automation has taken hold across the government. OMB says out of more than 100 initiatives under the leaner government portion of the PMA, the 24 Civilian CFO Act agencies reported 30 projects using robotics process automation, artificial intelligence, or other innovative software. And agency financial management offices are right in the middle of this transformation. For example, the Department of Housing and Urban Development used RPA to improve financial controls and reduce the time required to prepare financial statements. OMB says automation allowed HUD to cut nearly 6 months and more than 2,000 hours of employee time out of the process. Over at the Social Security Administration is another good example. It developed software to capture improper payments and automated a remittance system, collecting more than $1.25 million in program debt. These are just but two examples of how RPA can help CFOs and agency financial managers improve the accuracy of data input and calculations to avoid improper payments and errors. At the same time, federal employees are becoming more comfortable with the quote-unquote robots taking their jobs. The small wins by HUD, SSA, and many other agencies are proving that when a bot starts doing these remedial or menial tasks, employees are freed up to do more important, even more satisfying work. Still, RPA is not a panacea. Like any technology, there are challenges. Forrester research found primary challenges include RPA developing a business case, governance, organizational alignment, and the lack of culture framework for managing automation. So how can agency financial managers and others overcome these challenges and take full advantage of robotics process automation and other emerging technologies? Well, that's what our panelists are going to tell us today. Tim, let me start with you, Chief Scientist at GAO. Talk a little bit about RPA. How does that fit into what GAO is doing, looking at? You have the great title of Chief Scientist. Talk about it.
Yeah, no, thanks, Jason. I think you set it up well when you talked about big challenge problems like improper payments and things. At GAO, there's a story about sort of the internal support to our processes, like any other agency. We want to be more efficient. That's a key part of our agency DNA and our mission. But the other thing is, as we continue to do our normal job of helping Congress in its oversight role and evaluate other federal agencies, is getting a sense for how do we attack some of these grand challenge problems like improper payments and things. So our strategy really focuses on, I'm sure much of the audience is familiar with the people process technology. What we're inserting is a people process data technology in that. And I think it's important to recognize the value of data and what it can now bring. And I think the narrative here, the correct one from a top level, is that adding data, becoming more analytic in your operations, as is the basis of the intent of RPA, can create a lot of opportunities to essentially augment your staff, to reskill and upskill them. It's not a story of the robots taking over the world, and help really push up the value proposition of what our agency staff do and what they bring. It's more than just cost savings. I think it's quality of life and taking out that friction. So in our strategy, we do have now a chief data scientist at GAO, and we founded an innovation lab, and part of that is to create a space to ask the questions or take a problem-centered approach, like a grand challenge on impropers. How do you define impropers? How do we put computational systems around that? How do we look at that? But at the same time, also look at our own business process type operations and look at that. I think I'll just close here on this segment to say that I think that we really are talking about a macro shift from sort of a lot of the compliance work that is inherently manual, friction-oriented, if you will, and turning more into an enterprise risk management framework. ERM is out there, but I think a lot of these tools are bringing to us, led by RPA and then other more advanced ML and AI systems, machine learning, AI, artificial intelligence, to come on and help us actually manage risk at an enterprise level. And that, I think, is what's exciting for not only the CFOs, but the chief risk officers and any of the agency leadership with this technology.
You bring up a key piece here, moving away from that compliance framework. We've been hearing about this for years and years and years. RPA kind of lets you do that because you can just tell the bot, hey, does this box check out? And if it does, let's move us on. That's the value we're seeing about from whether it's financial management or HR or acquisition. That's the value, the benefit.
That's right, and that's where, again, I want to emphasize that this isn't a elimination of the human element of these things. The RPAs, or the bots, are going to have to be trained in some way. You just can't push sort of an easy button, as it were, and bots are going to magically appear and then know what to do, and they have to be trained, they have to be quality assured, they have to be monitored, and I think, again, there's no shortage of complexity of tasks that we are facing as a federal government and even the public sector or wider private sector. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity for humans to become more algorithmic, but more stewards of the bots, not necessarily replaced by the bots, but upskilled and augmented by them.
Let me turn to John over at DLA. You have Tim focused maybe on internal processes, people, process technology. You're probably at DLA a lot about the process side of it, and as someone who's leading the RPA effort, talk about where DLA is in using bots to really, if you will, augment the staff.
So right now we have approximately 60 automations in place that are contributing the equivalent of about 80 FTEs to the workforce annually right now. And we still have a 60 case of backlog that we have to work. As far as the governance goes, if we were starting from scratch, and us along with quite a few other agencies, we're sharing our information, our policies, what we're coming up with. We had to start from nothing and build these policies out. I think the scary part for the information assurance people or cybersecurity, they're called nowadays, is we say, well, a bot can do this and that, but you get into the separation of duties thing. And they're like, well, a human can't have both an accounts receivable and accounts payable role. Well, it's different with a bot. The bot's not doing that thinking. It does exactly what you tell it to do. So we're fighting for the bot to have multiple roles. That's one of those areas that we're having difficulty, and we're trying to push to governance. I liken it back to the days of VLANs. VLANs are everywhere today, but back in the beginning, it used to make you got to separate your data, your voice, and your video, right? Now you create a VLAN, it's logically separated. I think we'll get there with RPA at some point.
You mentioned 60 automations in place, but you have a 60 case backlog, meaning you have people who are waiting in line, raising their hand, going.
And we've got more coming all the time. So part of our way of educating the workforce and getting these is we do what we call road shows or workshops, and we go all across the United States doing these. We did 7 last year, which is where a majority of our backlog came from. Part of that is we go out, we help people understand what exactly RPA is, then we work them through filling out a form that we've created on their use case, what they think they might be able to automate the process. We still have to, just because somebody has an idea, you still got to go back and see if it's viable, is it worth pursuing? So we talk them through that, and then we have demos. So in the beginning, we took anything we could, but now with having almost 60 automations, when we go out and we do these road shows, we usually have a demo that we can show that's pertinent to the audience that we're seeing, and that helps a lot. And once people start saying, hey, you can do that, then they start saying, hey, can you do this? And we're like, well, yeah. It's very rare to find something that RPA can't automate.
You made Keith a little happy over there, by the way.
Did I?
Just a little bit. The smile just started to creep. Real quick, because I want to jump to Adam, but what's one use case that you're using RPA for? Just give me a quick example. There's 60 of them, so pick one.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, there's so many of them, I don't really get down into the weeds on them. So energy, that's a big one at DLA, right? They're probably the biggest purchaser of fuel in DoD. So prices change frequently, and there used to be quite a few people who would have to go in, they get the prices, go out and check, then they'd have to fill out all the forms and get the CLINs in.
And then the prices change again.
They could change while they're doing this. Now RPA goes out after hours, it's doing these things, it's filling in all the paperwork for them, it's there for their signature and ready for them to execute.
Very cool. Adam from Treasury, you guys have been on the leading edge of a lot of these emerging technologies. Talk about how you guys are looking at RPA and other automation.
Sure. So our journey began in 2017. We performed what we call our strategy study and looked at emerging technologies and where we could drive both savings and greater effectiveness of financial management processes. RPA was one of the initial technologies that was identified. And in our study, we estimated that at full implementation, financial management savings could be anywhere between $500 million and $750 million annually. We started within the Bureau of the Fiscal Service because they are a partner of us and we work together, so it's kind of easy to bring them into the scenario. and we explored the opportunities. Since that time, we've stood up what's called a digital workforce support organization that is responsible for deploying the bots. We've started within one of our organizations, what we call Fiscal accounting, which is responsible for our shared services. And the hope is that we are able to expand to additional organizations within the Bureau of the Fiscal Service on an ongoing basis.
And generally speaking, when you use the bots, you're applying them to kind of that menial, that redundancy, that transaction-based work, or is it something else because of what you guys do at the Bureau of Fiscal Service?
I would characterize it a little different. I would say they're standard processes that are repetitive, but also can drive great benefit for the customer. And so those would be items that we would target first. Also ones that I would say are very well documented. So if we have to go and document the process, that would add time to the deployment. So we want to start with the low-hanging fruit.
All right. A common refrain when we talk about new technology, but how quickly it catches on. And Keith, let me bring you into the conversation because that's one of the things we were kind of talking about before we got started is how quickly RPA is picked up. React to what you heard from our panel so far.
Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing variety of use cases and deployments and how it's helping each agency kind of either work its internal processes more successfully or help more customer facing. And I think that was what really excites me a lot about the future of RPA in government, is it can and it is helping a lot of the back office internal processes, but it could also really help with citizen-facing services. Citizens are a lot farther along than the government's prepared to address in terms of speed, getting same-day delivery on certain items, or transparency, expecting to know that something went through very quickly. And they don't have the kind of patience that maybe government has expected them to have on, well, we'll get back to you in due time. You know, the whole DMV model is going to have to be scrapped, and something much more efficient and effective is out there. But the other piece, and again, when it comes to financial management, this resonates, I know, with all of the folks here, is the reliability. As the RPA doesn't introduce errors, it follows the prescribed rules much more than you can always depend on even the best. And a lot of times, because the work is so redundant and so menial, that people kind of get distracted and lose focus, and so errors can easily happen. And that's why improper payments is a great area for RPA to help out with, because if you're making payment errors out there, it's quite a burden to go collect that back. It's much easier to do it right the first time, and everybody be all on board with that.
John, jump in.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up another point, because it seems like a lot of talk about RPA and there's a lot around the finance. Another place is it can help keep you out of trouble. The amount of FOIA requests we get, right? And you've got a certain amount of time to respond to those. Now we've automated that, where the bots are going out, they're going out looking for the FOIA requests, they bring them down, they distribute them to the right people, and that's been a huge benefit to our Office of General Counsel. So, and as a matter of fact, they were pushing hard. We've given it to them, and they sing our praises all over now.
It's always nice to hear when the lawyers are on your
Absolutely.
side.
Absolutely. What's nice about RPA is you actually get to see the benefit of your work, right? Those people are already your best advocates as soon as you've done something for them.
I want to go back to something that Keith said, and maybe Keith, start there. When you talk to government clients, you said it's nice that the back office is really enjoying it, like the FOIA example.
Yeah.
But what about the front office? Are you having those conversations, or are you still more focused on that back office?
Look, I mean, our company's been around for 16 years, and back office is a great place to start. It's I guess I would consider it a little more of a safer environment. If something breaks, well, not that many people know about it. But once you start trusting that these bots can actually deliver what you expect them to do, you start, and we've seen this in the commercial side, you start relying and putting some of your customer-facing operations in there, the same kind of transactional, redundant stuff. You can put it out there because you can depend that whether it's capturing money or interacting with customers, this is something you can depend on. And especially as the technology improves, as you can do more and more with artificial intelligence plus RPA, and use other emerging technologies that are out there and kind of pair them up. In certain instances, you can do more and more critical mission-driven operations using automation.
Adam, let me ask you to jump in on this as well, because of what your role is and what the Bureau of Fiscal Service does. You're both internal, you work with the government, but then you work with industry and you process Keith's invoices. Is that an area that you're saying, okay, where else can we apply, whether it's RPA or another type of emerging technology automation to help on, if you will, the citizen side, or in this case, the business side?
We're really looking at, well, one, both how can we use RPA internal to Treasury, but then how can we use it outside of the Treasury as well. Keith brought up artificial intelligence. So what we really want to try and do over time is maybe move along the intelligent automation spectrum. So when we look at an RPA and a bot, again, what I said earlier was I'm looking at standardized, repetitive activity that really don't require a lot of decision making. But as we start venturing into other areas, there is an element of decision that needs to be considered, and there are opportunities with machine learning to train these bots to use some of the judgments that a human would make, but again, it would be kind of a standardized, repetitive way to do things.
All right, it's a great point, and one we're going to jump into in the next segment, so let's take a quick break. You're listening to the panel discussion, Reducing Improper Payments with Automation, Robotics, and AI, sponsored by Automation Anywhere on Federal News Radio, part of the Federal News Network.